Good afternoon, everybody, and I apologize for not being there in person, but I'm happy to talk about what we did this summer and a little bit about what we plan to do in the future. First slide shows Blair holding some malachite ore, copper oxide hydroxide ore collected from on surface from the very western part of the property. And the other picture shows the beautiful bornite purple ore with gold-colored chalcopyrite from, again, the very western part of the property. Maybe if we go to the next slide. Prospecting and mapping, myself and a team of graduate students from UBC and also St. Andrews in Scotland. We spent a couple of months last summer doing very careful mapping and prospecting. And in terms of the samples we collected, you can see the values are shown here. Obviously, some of these are very, very high. As we'll see in the next few maps, the values tend to be elevated towards the west of the sampling area. The next slide, it's the one showing gold. And so a number of things to point out here. You can see the fault, the black line with the teeth on it. And the area that we have been concentrating on in the past, where almost all the drilling was done, is between Helipad and Harrison. And that's what we thought was our tellurium resource. We've managed to extend the fault that controls the mineralization much further to the west. And then, of course, we have the new porphyry discovery in the gray circle there, what we're calling the pond occurrence. You might wonder what the colors are here. They're showing the different kinds of alteration we have. We'll get back to that in a second, but it essentially tells us where we are in the porphyry system. Now, this was the map for gold, which we have constant small amounts of gold. I think you'll find the next few maps more exciting. The next one is for silver. Do you have that up, Ty?
Yep.
Yeah, you can see that there is high silver all the way along, but that quite high values south of pond, and then again at the very western part of the property. The next slide is tellurium, and it matches what we saw with silver. The slide after that is a map for copper. And again, we're getting consistent values for copper, but again, higher on the west side, which makes sense because we have a copper porphyry. And then the next slide, we're comparing what we see in our samples to the model for a porphyry system. Now we're going to go back to those colors, the alteration types, that at the pond, well, the outer part is propylitic, the green. As we get closer in, we have phyllic, which on the map is purple, but on the cross section is yellow. And then finally, we have a little bit of argillic alteration, which you can see is the darker brown material on the cross section. So what we're seeing is that we're zeroing in on a copper porphyry system here. And what we think is happening, we haven't drafted it in yet, is that the fault that controls the other mineralization continues on to the very western part of the property and skirts the porphyry by about 250 meters. So the porphyry is probably the source of all the mineralization, but the tellurium and the silver and the gold, etc., was channeled along the thrust fault to create what we call the main vein system, which again is where almost all the drilling has taken place so far. If we go to the next slide, it shows where porphyries are in BC, and it shows the operating mines, the projects, and the closed mines. And you can see that Deerhorn is very close to Huckleberry, and where they were doing a lot of drilling this summer. And just pointing out that we are in porphyry territory, and we do have a porphyry. Not only do we have a copper porphyry, that we have this vein system associated with it, with the tellurium, silver, etc. So I think it's quite exciting for these reasons. The next slide again shows the surface mineralization of bornite and malachite. And Blair and Tony discovered this quite late last season, and so we weren't able to do much with it. But it's on the extreme west side of the maps that we've just been looking at. And again, more indication that we are in a copper porphyry. We need, how big is it? Well, we don't know. We have geophysical data from the summer. We are still analyzing it, but we're hoping to have a first draft of a report on that by the end of the week. It is all very, very encouraging. If we go to the next slide, it's a map showing molybdenum. And Bob Lane, who's been associated with this project for I think a couple of decades now, keeps insisting that we have a moly property here. The one thing I will say is the moly values are not bad, but they're very consistent. It's not shown on this map, but over the entire claim package, we're getting high moly values, especially to the east and the north. And that's something we definitely need to follow up on, especially since Bob is so insistent that this is an important part of the project. And then the next slide shows tungsten, and we know we have a part of the deposit is a tungsten skarn localized up around Harrison on the map, but we see it extends down to the southeast, and we're still not sure where it fits geologically, but there is abundant tungsten on one part of the property. I will also point out the orange star with the red line coming from it is where we did do some initial drilling on the pond this summer, and I'll come back to that in a second. But before we did the drilling, and the next slide talks about the mapping program, and I'm not going to go into detail about this, except that it proves that the porphyry and the tellurium systems are linked and that the faults are all the same. So we have a large ore forming process going on that generated both the copper porphyry and the Deerhorn gold silver tellurium veining. The next slide shows some of the drill core from this summer. Now, we didn't do anywhere near as much drilling as we wanted to. There were a lot of logistical problems, largely due to the unprecedented fire activity in British Columbia last summer. Now, the fires weren't directly affecting us, but what happened is that all of the logistical elements were affected. For example, it was throughout the summer, it was very difficult to get a helicopter, and you might have one all lined up, and then all of a sudden the ministry takes it away to go fight fires now, which is understandable, but it meant that our drilling couldn't start until the very end of the season, so we didn't do very much. But what we did see is very encouraging, and you can see the mineralization in core here. Pyrite and malachite again being copper ore on the left, chalcopyrite, which is copper sulfide in the middle, and propylitic veining, which shows us where we are in the porphyry system. So we're looking forward to doing a lot more drilling in the future. And my final slide is about conclusions. And I think this is, the results are highly encouraging. To begin with, as I mentioned, the main vein, which is concentrating the tellurium, appears to extend much further west than previously thought, in fact, right across the property. And again, running about 250 meters south of the surface expression of a copper porphyry. The drill results suggest that we're not far above the ore zone of the porphyry, where the chalcopyrite is concentrated. And the fact that we're finding copper mineralization, copper ore minerals on surface to the far southwest of the property suggests a large system. We're only so far just scratching the surface. Remember, the main reason why is that copper porphyry part was not exposed until about 2012, when the glaciers in the area had melted away enough you could see them. And so we've only known about the porphyry since 2012. So I hope that helps, and leave it there.
Thank you, Lee.